All right, in this video, we'll be going over the brand new OFX plugin built into DaVinci Resolve 19 called Film Look Creator. Now, what's really exciting about this plugin is it's extremely easy to create a really dynamic, amazing look with very minimal tools. And it's also possible to not really break the image. So we'll go through some of the settings later in this video, but you get access to grain and bloom and halation and some of these really cool features all kind of put together nicely in this one plugin. One also really exciting thing is in this video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 unique creative LUTs that we made specifically with Film Look Creator, and you can download these LUTs. We're going to have a description, or we're going to have a link in the description of this video. So check that out, and you can get all 5 of these looks for free. And this is how I ended up creating it. I just used Film Look Creator. So it's going to be really exciting to be able to look and see all the possible options that you can do and create with this brand new OFX plugin. Now, this will be for DaVinci Resolve 19 Studio version. This is a beta right now, but I also turn these into LUTs, including the presets that come with this plugin so that you can use this in Premiere or Final Cut if you don't have the Studio version or just the basic DaVinci Resolve software as well. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at this brand new plugin. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of these clips, and I went ahead and laid everything out like this. So we have Film Look Creator. If you go over to your effects panel in your library, down here in the Resolve FX Film Emulation section, you will have a brand new option called Film Look Creator. Now, this is unique to DaVinci Resolve 19 that just released last week. So you will have to download the beta version in order to utilize this. This is also, I believe, exclusive to the Studio plan. So in order to use this, you do need to have DaVinci Resolve Studio. But if you don't, I went ahead and also turned these into LUTs so that you can get access to the presets that they have built into here. So when we just drag this right on to Film Look Creator, you will see this brand new window here with all of these settings, and we can turn this off and turn it on. I'm working with images right now that have already been converted to Rec 709, so we're working in the Rec 709 color space today. And there are presets, which I'm going to break down right here. So the first one will be default 65 millimeter, and this one I kind of end up using the majority of the time. The difference between 65 millimeter and 35 is just the vignette and the grain settings. Those are kind of the major differences between those two. And then you can go to cinematic, which will also add this letterbox effect. And then you can go to bleach bypass to get a bleach bypass look, and then a nostalgic option right here. So these are the majority of them, and then you can just do no effects, or you can do custom, which we're going to be going through the custom settings if you're following along. But starting with default 65 millimeter, when we want to create this into a LUT as well, because this kind of acts just like a DCTL, where I can come over here, right click and say generate a LUT, and it will store all of these settings, but it will only store the options that are available in 3D LUT compatible when that's checked. So obviously you only get access to the color settings and the split tone and any adjustments you've made to the color space override. If you want to include effects blend, that will include all of these additional settings here, which I have kind of created my exact settings that I like, which I'm going to share with you with bloom, grain, and even halation. So I've played around with all these different settings and dialed in my favorite options. So if you follow along closely, you'll be able to see these in action. So it'll be really cool. But one thing I noticed whenever I turned on Film Look Creator for the first time is you can't really zero out the settings to get to the default. It already comes programmed with a generic film look. I compared this to the Resolve's built-in looks like the 2383 look or the Fuji option, and none of them match this. So they have some kind of look already being applied, and then you can adjust all these additional settings that we're going to take a look at. And honestly, if you're creating looks or you want to create a dynamic look, this is the quickest and most efficient way to do it, because what I've noticed is if we come over to, say, this test image right here, and you can see that it has some halation on it and everything right now, but let's just turn on the 3D LUT compatible and let's see how hard we can push this image and see if it breaks. Because that's what's interesting, is with all these tools in DaVinci Resolve, it's so easy to break an image by pushing colors or having them in a different hierarchy. And this one's kind of forcing you into a certain flow that I think works really well. So if we go to our exposure, this one works really nicely. I love the way the exposure works. Let me pull up my scopes here so you can see the curve. So if we just reset everything, you can see it's already got a tone curve applied to this look. It's rolling off the highlights, lifting up the black levels a little bit. And if we take the exposure, you can see how it's affecting exposure. And I really like the way that this happens. So if you're wanting to adjust your exposure, I'd recommend doing that. With your color space override, since I'm already in a Rec. 709 Gamut 2.4 timeline, I'm just using my timeline. But if you wanted to use DaVinci Wide Gamut, that also works. And I believe these exposure settings are adapted to those color space settings that you've chosen in the drop-down menu. But right now I'm just using Rec. 709 2.4. And then your contrast, you can see how that affects the curve really nicely. And we can just crank it, and you can see it's really not even breaking it too much down there, and we've cranked it hard. Highlights is going to lift up the highlights. By default, it's going to be rolled off there. So if we want to bring it back, we can go all the way to 100, and it looks like it goes right over the edge, just a hair. I'm looking at the scope right there, and you can see we can pull it down, and it's nice, gentle highlight roll off there. And then for fade, this one's just going to fade the black point. I wish I could adjust this a little bit more. I'm not a big fan of fade, and I haven't found myself using this that much. It's kind of nice to have, but again, I'm going to have to crank the contrast. I can never get my fade, my black level, down to pure 0. And so that's one issue that I've run into whenever I was working with this. So just note you're going to have a little bit of a toe at the bottom that's going to be faded up, so you won't have a pure black option right there. But fade is just going to kind of give you that faded look in the shadows and black levels. Now, white balance is honestly really, really powerful. So I'm going to show you white balance on this shot. So let's reset it. And if I want to warm up the image, right now by default, it's at 6,500. And if I warm it up, it's got a really nice look to the white balance. And I really like how that performs. If we reset that, and if I just came over to the color wheels and just did it here in the temp slider, you can see how it's doing it a little bit differently. And I don't like the way it works with the primary color wheels using the temp slider there. But coming over here and doing it, it's got that density to it, which is really unique, because as we're moving on, we're going to see that the saturation and the colors are in a subtractive mode, which is very reminiscent of film, so that whenever you're adding saturation, it's kind of deepening and darkening those colors to add saturation instead of lightening up the image. It's not going to be brighter. So if I came over here, took my saturation and cranked it up, we can see how that is impacting the image. Let's just reset that. But if I come over here and crank up the saturation, it's actually bringing down certain colors and creating more density there. So I really like how the saturation works in this new Film Look Creator plugin. So if you want to add saturation, this is a really beautiful way of adding it. And let's take a look to make sure that we're not breaking the image. That's one thing I wanted to check. Let's go to this image. And again, I'm going to reset everything. But you can see when we go to the white balance, okay, obviously if you go all the way there, it's going to break it. So don't go past 3,000 maybe. You're going to have some issues. But that is at the extreme in order to break that. For the tint looks good. That's fine. Now, if we go to the skin bias, which is really cool because you can kind of, let me see if pull up the scope here. Our skin, we can really hone it in whether we want it to be more warm or yellow or pink. And then here is the subtractive saturation. And look at that. Adding saturation, but getting more dense, deep, rich colors. I love that. And then the richness is going to be taking those colors that are the most bright and increasing saturation. So it's almost like a sat versus sat curve is how I've experienced this richness tab. So one way that I'd like to play with it is increase saturation, strong, and then pull back a little bit on the richness. And that kind of has a nice look there that I love. And then if we want to do bleach bypass, we can just turn that on and it looks good. Then when we get into the split toning, so if we come over here to this curve, let me just lower this intensity here. We can turn on the split tone, and let me change this setting to be RGB so we can actually see these curves. All right, there we go. All right, so now when we're looking at the split tone, we can easily, it splits the top part and then also the bottom, and then you can change the pivot. So depending on where you want this to influence, if you want it to not influence skin tone, you want to be mindful of where you're positioning this pivot. And then you can change the hue. So whether you want it to be cooler in the highlights and then warmer in the shadows, you can play with this hue, and it really creates a dynamic look. So if we go to this, let's just go to this clip right here, this first one. Let's reset the split tone, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the first look that we created. And again, you get access to this if you want to add, if you want to check out the description. I believe we have it in the comment section right now as well. But if you fill that out, you pretty much get these LUTs for free. I went ahead and took these presets also, and you're going to get access to that. So I went ahead and created the 65mm option, the bleach bypass, the cinematic, and nostalgic. So the presets that come installed with this, I've already turned into LUTs so that you can easily use them in Premiere or Final Cut, or if you don't have the studio version of Resolve, you get access to it right away as well. Let's take a look at the split tone and how that's being influenced. But we're going to turn on this first look. This is the first look that I created, and you can see this split toning is really kind of dynamic. I can crank it up and then really change the hue to kind of create a really nice look. And then by changing the pivot, you get this nice look. So I really like this split toning option. It looks really nice. And then if I wanted to crank up this subtractive sat, but then if it's a little bit strong on the lips or really saturated options, let's just pull back the richness just a hair to right there. Maybe let's crank up the contrast on this shot. If we want to roll off the highlights, we can roll them off right there. Maybe just a slight fade in the shadows. And then if we wanted to check the white balance, do we want it to be a little bit cooler right there? Looks nice. Or do we want it to be really nice and warm? And this, I mean, this white balance tool, I would be using this from now on when it comes to white balance. This is fantastic. And then we can just bias the skin. So see how it's warm right here? It's yellow. And then if we wanted to lean pink, and we can pull up our scopes, and we're going to take a look to see where we're at. I'm just going to switch over to here, and let's just take a look on the scopes where we're at, and we can see that it's looking nice, and we can just bias that skin yellow or more pink. So honestly, right there is going to be the best result in my opinion. And if we wanted to increase exposure just a hair, pull down highlight, maybe not so much contrast, and then maybe not so warm right there. I mean, there's before, there's after. It's a brand new look we just created. And now let's take it a step further by adding some effects. So I'm going to show you my favorite effects. You can also turn off the effects by just bringing them down here, or you can leave on your effects and pull out the color. So that's really cool that they've separated that. I'm going to pull out the effects because I'm going to come over here, and these are my dialed in settings that I've created already. So if you want to copy this, then pay attention so that you can use this. But this one I have the color turned off and I'm only using the effects. Okay. And I personally don't use vignette that often. This shot might work really well. So if we turn on vignette, you can see it kind of just draws our attention more to this person's face in front of us. So this one I might throw on there. And then the other three options that I like to use would be halation, bloom, and grain. I'm not really using flicker that often or gate weave. Those are going to be some settings if I really want it to kind of feel a little bit more organic, like film stock going through projectors or anything like that. You can turn those on and play with those. I personally don't use them, so I'm going to not go over those detailed settings, but the ones I'm going to focus on are right here. So halation, let me go to a clip where we can really see this look. So I'm going to go to this shot, and I'm going to zoom in to this section over here on the right. So, and then I can also turn on a different option. So I'm just going to go to the fifth look that we created, and then let's zoom in to this bike. Okay, so if we turn off our effects and then we turn it back on. Now, what I really like on this halation is, let's turn off grain, bloom, and vignette for now. If we turn this before and after, it's going to be very subtle. You don't want halation to be distracting, honestly. So if we cranked it up just to kind of see it, I'm going to be looking at the way it hits this seat, some of this edging right here and then the window, and then the reflection around the gears of this bike. Looks really nice because it kind of adds this glow texture to it. And the hue you can change if you want it to be more yellow or green or really strong red and purple with your halation color, the hue. I personally have liked to use it right around here is my setting of 0.25, and then my radius, if you want it to be a hard edge or you want it to just bloom everything, you can crank it up. I like to use it right around 1.9, and then the amount is just a taste. So I feel like I ended up having it probably around 0.3, and that felt like a really nice option for halation. So if you wanted to copy that setting, that's a really good option to play with. And then bloom, I use bloom just ever so softly. It's going to add a little bit of bloom around highlights as well, which is kind of happening in the halation naturally. So I would just keep this really subtle. And then when you move into grain, this is where I kind of dialed in the settings. So this one, because this shot is a little bit further away, the grain might be a little bigger than I'd prefer. So I can pull back the size, or I can just work with the amount right there. And also one of my favorite settings is this image defocus. Let me go to a shot right here. Okay. So if we turn it off and we turn it on, it's going to be softly blurring this image, which really makes the grain pop a little bit more organically. So I prefer to have it around 0.85 or 0.9, felt really good. You don't want it to be so blurry, but I want to take that edge of the sharpening off, and so I'm going to keep it at 0.85, which has been nice. And then size and amount are the two other main settings that I used a lot. And if we went to this shot right here, you can see the effect. Watch the bottom of the stress right here. So if you crank out the defocus, you can see where it's playing into that shot, and it's just nice texture, and it's just adding a slight texture to it. Another example would be, let's see, right here on this one. So let's crank up the halation a little bit more. Okay, and I'm focusing on it hitting right around this rack on the top of the car right here. And we're also getting a nice effect to the skin. So right here, you can see how it's slightly blooming around the face, and it looks kind of nice. I think this one might be strong. Now remember, if you're using a strong color effect before it, it's going to intensify it. So let's go to this strong look right here that I made. This is the 4th LUT that you can also get from the pack. So here we have the halation, and maybe you want it to be a little bit more aggressive. So it's really showing here, and it pops through nicely, gives you that texture. Also, this grain is really nice because it's slightly defocusing the image. So overall, I kind of have separated these so I could use any type of effect I wanted to go through, but these are my favorite ones. So if you're wanting to get a nice look, this halation, bloom, and grain settings have been working really well for me. And then the settings, if you wanted to pause the video later on, if you're rewatching this, and look at these settings. So the 4th effect that I'm using, this is the look I created just using the split tone and then also the color settings. If you don't want it to be that dark, you can easily just crank up your exposure a little bit and bring that back up. But I had this a little bit darker, more contrast, a lot more saturation, and it really creates a nice look in my opinion. So I love how that's playing out there, especially in this shot. I know it's a little bit strong for this one, but if we look at the first LUT, so this is the first look that we have, that we created. And this one I built off of the idea a little bit more of the 65 millimeter. So we've already changed these settings, but this is the LUT that I've included. And then also the second one, which is play on the bleach bypass, but keeping a little bit more saturation in play. This one's been really fun to play with. The third one, this one's more of a medium darker image with a little bit more greens popping through for sure. This 4th one is gonna be the strongest stylistically. You can see on this clip how it's impacting this image, and you're getting more of this lighter green warmth to skin tone and highlights. And then the last one is going to be the opposite, where you're really getting pink skin tones, and that's playing out really cool. But honestly, we wanted to give you a lot of different options when it comes to looks. So, I mean, this one is a really great shot. So here's a nice one that I think can work on a lot more footage. And then the second one, more of a bleach bypass look. The third option, this is also a really good one, and you can see a little bit of the halation taking place around this watch face. This one's going to be a strong look, of course, and then a gentle one that's going to be very similar to how gentle the first one is. But those are 5 looks that you get access to that we just wanted to make available to you as we were showcasing this brand new OFX plugin, because honestly, it's really cool. I don't know if any of y'all have actually used it yet. If you have, let me know in the comments or the description. I'd love to hear your thoughts about any settings that have stood out to you. But overall, one thing that's really special, like I mentioned before, is it's so difficult to break this image. I mean, whenever we were looking at everything, it looks so clean. When I've made LUTs from these, like, look at this. This is really smooth. So the results are fantastic. And again, if we try to break it and just really crank it up, I mean, it's really difficult. Even that, trying to break it, is just not really doing it. Let me turn that back on. And that's cranking up richness and subtractive saturation all the way. Playing with the skin bias, I mean, that's still really smooth. And then changing the white balance. Obviously, don't go too extreme lower than 3000. That will break it. But all of these colors blend really well together. The fade, you want to be gentle on that one. You don't want to go too extreme. So I'd probably say, I mean, I wouldn't go over half on that one. And then your highlights, even the highlights roll off nicely. You're going to get a little bit of a hard edge if you have your richness and your saturation cranked, but I kind of like to have my lightness, my highlights a little bit higher. I don't want to roll it off too extreme, but your contrast, just cranked contrast and saturation and everything, very, very interesting. So really good results overall. I think it's fantastic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts if there's anything that you want to chat about. I'm going to go ahead and dive into some of the comments real quick as we take a look at if anybody has any questions. So, all right, Dan, what's up? Is the Film Look Creator available in Final Cut, or is this only available in DaVinci? So this tool is brand new to DaVinci. and it's got the secret sauce going on behind the engine that you can't really turn off. So it already starts with kind of a generic preset. I went ahead and turned that generic preset into a LUT that's included in the pack, and it's called FLC 65mm, and it's just based off of this setting right here. And I just turned this into a LUT, but obviously it doesn't have any of the effects. So you can bring that into Final Cut and build on top of that. However, these individual tools are not available. The closest you'll get, I think what's powerful is this subtractive sat and this white balance. Those are pretty awesome. So I love that the way that those work. Color Finale, I don't believe has a subtractive color mode yet necessarily. So you don't get access to that. And then the white balance, you wouldn't have access as well. So a lot of these things you won't be able to use natively or anything that's similar in Final Cut, unfortunately. This is a brand new plugin that they just launched. A lot of people have asked, hey, is this going to replace Dehancer, or is it going to replace like Look Designer or something like that? Those plugins, as I've played with them and kind of learned through them, is that they're very specific to certain film stocks, and they've built everything on top of that. But if you want a one-stop shop that's super easy to create and you can get a really good look right away without breaking things, this is a great start. So a lot of people have considered, do I go Dehancer? It's like you can get more options and everything, but I would say play with this first. And if there's stuff that you can't create with this look, then maybe it might be fun to play with different film stocks from another program. But honestly, the Halation looks pretty great with just these three sliders. You can use the OFX plugin, the Halation, already, but it kind of keeps everything together in this plugin, which makes it really effective as a unique look creator in Resolve like this. So, so let me see if there's anything else. Cheers for the free LUTs from Joseph. Big fan of the conversion kit for Vlog. Sadly, I can't justify the creative LUTs. I totally get that. We just are giving you now 5+ LUTs for free that are creative LUTs. So go ahead and download this pack. You get it for free. Give it a try and see if you get good results. And you can use that on top of the conversion base LUTs that we have for Vlog. I think that could be really, really helpful for you. Let's see. Any other comments? So I know, Dan, if this was available in Final Cut, game changer. I totally get it. I know Dehancer, I think, also works for Final Cut. So you can get some of these things built into there. Color Finale is probably the most versatile plugin that I've seen so far with Final Cut. But again, when it comes to color, I'm trying to do from very extensive things. And whenever I'm building LUTs, I'm going to be using this software for now. Even though I will color grade in Final Cut and produce weddings and other stuff in Final Cut because it's just a much better editor than Resolve and Premiere. I'm currently taking a course on Resolve for editing, and there's still things that I can do much quicker in Final Cut. So I wish Final Cut would just come out with some updates. I mean, Resolve every year is populating so many cool things, and you get access to some really cool updates that I wish Apple would definitely focus on more, because I think Final Cut has a lot of potential, but it just needs the updates. So hopefully this year they come up with some much better updates, especially for the iPad and everything. But yeah. So overall, that's kind of the plugin. I wanted to showcase everything. Again, if you are interested in these looks that I showcased at the beginning of this video, pick it up in the description of this video or the comment section. We will have it linked, and you can get the 5 looks that we created along with the 4 additional presets that come with Film Look Creator, so that if you don't have access to this plugin but you want some of these looks or you want to build off of it, then definitely download these because they're free. But we wanted to showcase this new plugin, but also give you all an opportunity to get access to these in LUT form. So anyway, everybody, thanks so much. Again, make sure that you're subscribed or hit that notification bell, because we're going to try to be going live every week with a new topic. If there's something you want us to see or review, let us know in the comments so that we can plan out the future videos that you want to see. and we're learning a lot through this process as well. It's really fun to connect with you all. But again, I'm really thankful that y'all are here. If you want to check out any of our brand new LUT packs, you can check out Gamut.io, where we have a lot of really fun, exciting things coming down the pipeline. So make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletter as well on our website so that you get access to discounts on specific launches that we have, but also get access to notifications on future videos like this. So, all right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and head out. Thanks so much for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.